Hey everybody, Sarah here. So I know this is a bit of a different setting from usual, but today we're going to be doing a Q&A, and this is the easiest way for me to do it. Just remember, like, subscribe, share, all that stuff. Thank you, Reptilinks, for helping to support this channel. And if you would like to use my code, SarahSnake27 at checkout on their website, you can get $5 off, and I also get $5. So I want to thank all of our members on this channel who are also helping to support. I'm going to put the list over here since I don't have it in front of me, but thank you guys so much for being members. If anyone else would like to be a member, it is $2 a month, and you get member exclusive content, which is access to live videos after they are over, as well as your own video each and every week. Also, I do have a website, sarahssnakeshop.com. I will link that in the description down below. All this stuff will be linked in the description down below. I have a 10% off everything on my website from now until the middle of December. And that includes snakes and everything else if you use the code XMIS10 at checkout. The last day for shipping reptiles is going to be December 15th, and that's only if the weather is cooperative at that point. So if you are wanting to get a snake from me as a Christmas gift, it might be a good idea to make it an early Christmas gift and go as soon as possible for that. All right, we're going to get into the questions. So these questions were all compiled from YouTube, either in the YouTube comments, or I'm also going to go over the live video questions because I think that a lot of people in the live video that I did on November 11th, which you can watch again if you are a member and you join the channel, I thought that their questions were really good, and maybe the answers would be helpful for some of you as well. So I'm going to jump into those first. So the first question is, what is the difference between a 66% possibly het and a 50% possibly het? Now I made this little graph for this to hopefully it'll help explain. So this is the 50% possibly het, and this is the male side and the female side. Each parent has two different sides of their DNA, and in this scenario the male is het. It doesn't matter which females have, but we're going to say that this right here is a gene mutation on the DNA, and he is het for that gene mutation. So when we lay out the possibilities, it's 1 out of 4. So we can combine A with A, and that's this. We can combine A with B, and that's this. We can combine this B with this A, and that's here, or this B with this B, and that's here. And as you can see, when this B gets carried over, that het also gets carried over. However, since the other three parts of the DNA that we're working with do not have that gene mutation, when they combine, there is nothing. So all of these are visually going to be normals, let's say, for the most part in corn snakes. Now we're not talking about tessera, palmetto, that kind of stuff. This is for recessive genes, but these are all going to be normals, but 50% of them do carry this gene mutation that we're talking about. Now on the other side is the 66% possibly het, which is actually more like 67% when you round, but we have the same thing. We have the male and female, but this time they are both het for that gene mutation. And so when we have our AA combination, this is a normal with a het. We have our AB combination, which is the homozygous version. We have this AB, which is a normal not het for anything. And then we have the BB, which is a normal with a het. So what we see in this breakdown is this is a normal with nothing. These two are normals het. And then this one is a visual. So if you take out the visual, you have 3 normals. 3, statistically, 3 out of 4 normals, and 2 of those 3 are het, but you don't know which one it is. So when you do the 2 divided by 3, 2/3, 2 out of 3, that actually ends up being 0.666, which is 66% or 67 if you round up. So that is the difference between that. I hope that helps. The next question is, will females ovulate a second time if they have reabsorbed eggs? And the answer is, generally speaking, yes. This situation was the female had ovulated early in the year. He had then paired the female with the male, but then she did not lay. She reabsorbed the eggs. And it is possible, of course, that they will ovulate again, and sometimes they will use the retained sperm to just go ahead and fertilize. If you miss the first ovulation, normally females will have a second ovulation in the year, and they might use that retained sperm, but if you notice that she starts to ovulate a second time, you can go ahead and pair her with the male again. What size prey do you do for extra small baby corns? This person specifically had twins that were very tiny. What I normally do is just get the head of a frozen thawed pinky, and some people will also use like the part of the tail of a mouse, or pieces of a mouse, or maybe even pieces of like a quail thigh or something like that. You'll have to use pieces of something else. If you can get access to Reptilinks, which I have a code for that, which is Sarah Snake 27. If you can get access to Reptilinks, you can get the micro links, and those are really, really good for tiny baby snakes because you can kind of make them whatever length that you want, and they're small enough around that the smallest corn snake I've ever had could definitely eat them, no problem. What is a specter genetically? That's the next question. Genetically, we know it's a ghost. The original hypo, though, that came out of, or that began the specter line, came from Naples, Florida, in a pet store that she was presumably wild caught. And she was then bred straight into a ghost line, and that is where we got specters. We do know that specters are different a little bit, like they're different looking. That's why they are a line of ghosts. They don't look like your typical ghosts. As far as we know, they are just hypomelanistic A and anerythristic type A, but we don't have anything else isolated to say for sure anything else. What morphs originated in Okatee? So there's Lava and Redcoat, which originated, I believe, in the same line of Okatee. Joe Pierce was the one who kind of ended up proving all of that out. According to the official stories, Tessera is also from an Okatee line. Sunkissed and Stargazer, of course, also came out of Okatees. Then there's also an amelanistic that is called Red Zeppelin, that is a pure Okatee line amelanistic. If you would like to know more about those things, I do have morph books that specifically talk about that, and that is for sale on my website, sarahsnakeshop.com. And again, you can use that 10% off code if you would like. The next question was, can palmetto have been a wild caught if it's incomplete dominant? So apparently there's a sort of conspiracy theory going on that because palmetto was wild caught visual white snake, and then we also proved it to be incomplete dominant later on, that it couldn't possibly have been wild caught because it's incomplete dominant. And that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me personally. I kind of understand the logic. However, if you look at a het palmetto, it a lot of times doesn't really even look that different. It only, to me, looks about as different as like a Miami does to a Keys corn, and those are both still pure corn snakes that you can go catch in the wild. They're just different. And so I'm not even 100% sure that palmetto is incomplete dominant. However, aside from that, we have found visuals of other morphs in the wild pretty easily. Even the first amelanistic was caught in the wild. So even though, you might say, well, it might be hard for a very brightly colored snake to live in the wild, that's true, but it has happened before, and so I don't really see any reason why it couldn't happen. Again, that's just my personal opinion on it. Is it okay to breed a male to a female half his size? In this situation, the person had a 1,100 gram 6-foot male that he wanted to breed to a relatively newer female, who's about 3 feet long. Generally speaking, I would say this is probably okay. I would be more, of course, worried about her getting hurt than him. It is, in my opinion, better to have a smaller male than a bigger male, but sometimes you can't help it. I'd say give it a try, but keep an eye on them, and don't overdo it with them. Only pair them once. That's just kind of what I would do. Is pied genetically linked to diffused? As far as genetic linkage, I would say I don't really know the answer to that, except it's obviously only visible in diffused. Now, pied, we know, is related to a gene mutation on where cells, pigment cells mostly, are placed. And it's the same thing that causes palmetto. It's a very similar mutation. It's actually a mutation in the same gene. We know that we can have visual pieds, though, even though they don't look pied, without diffused. So in my opinion, it's very similar to only being able to see halo in amelanistic types. It can be there even if you don't have diffused. but you just don't see it. And so I don't necessarily think that they are genetically linked in a way that you can't separate them, because I believe that you can separate them, but you just can't see it when they're separated. Are there any behavioral differences between morphs? Not necessarily. Sunkissed do kind of have a reputation for being a little feisty, but I haven't really noticed that problem for a long time in Sunkissed. I think it's more that personality runs in families and not so much that it runs in morphs. And I think that the reason people think it runs in morphs is because it runs in families. That's my opinion. Has Stargazer been bred out of the hobby? I would say yes and no. So some people are specifically keeping Stargazers and het Stargazers for testing, but not breeding them on purpose to produce more. And then most of the offspring for testing are usually fed off to king snakes or whatever. So I would say as far as the common hobby goes, yeah, you're probably not going to find Stargazers just randomly out there. But it is possible. I don't want to say it's completely gone, but it is mostly gone. Why do some females not want to breed in a season? Part of it sometimes is the male. Sometimes the females don't like certain males, or sometimes a male doesn't want to breed to a certain female. But sometimes females, you just miss their ovulation, or they ovulate early or they ovulate late. And so trying to breed them, even if it's just a couple days off sometimes, they won't want to breed because that ovulation is not happening. Any tips on breeding females who were egg bound the previous year? It depends on the severity of the egg binding. If it was a very simple, an egg got stuck, but she was able to push it out on her own within 24 to 48 hours, I would say she's probably good to go. Just make sure she's really hydrated and has a lot of calcium, like a calcium supplement maybe when you breed her. If the egg binding was worse than that, like maybe you had to take her to a vet and it had to be massaged out or something like that, I would say skip a year, give her at least a year off and don't let her breed, but then maybe the next year she would be okay. If it was really severe, like they had to go in surgically, then I would say just don't breed her. She's a pet after that. It really depends on the severity. How long do you wait to sex baby corns once they hatch out of the egg? I would say wait till after the first shed. That's going to give you the most accurate, especially if you're popping, that's going to be the most accurate for you. When will the videos of the 2022 corn snake prices be up? Very soon. In fact, next week is going to be the next book review, where I'm also going to be giving away the book that I reviewed last month. And then the 3 weeks after that in December are all going to be the corn snake morph price videos, which is pretty much just me highlighting the prices of the morphs over the course of the year and then comparing them to the prices last season. Okay, now I'm going to move on to some actual YouTube comments, and we're going to try to go through these pretty quickly. Is there an easy way to tell the difference between ultramale anery and ultramale ghost? No, not really. Ultramale ghosts will be lighter though, so if you have ultramale aneries and ultramale ghosts in the same clutch, probably comparing the siblings is going to be the best way to know that. However, individually, without test breeding, there's not any really good ways to know that. How long do you keep your snakes at a temperature as you are going into and coming out of brumation? For example, how long at 75 or 65, etc. So I like to, instead of take my snakes from their 85-degree snake room down to a 55-degree room, give them some gradients in between there. So I'll normally take them from their 80, it's not really 85, it's more like 82, to room temperature, which is close to 72, and then I take them down to 65, and then take them down to between 50 and 55 for the rest of the time. And I usually keep them at those temperatures for about a week at a time until they're down at the temperature that I want them, which is about 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit. 3-month-old baby corn snake would not eat her live pinky. The breeder told me that she would eat a live pinky. Let's see, how do I get her to eat a pinky? Apparently right now the snake is running away from the pinky, and my answer pretty much is put her in a deli cup overnight with the food, and you may have to do some trial and error, but if the snake is overly stressed out, it could be that it's in too large of an enclosure, especially if it's a baby snake. So if you're having this trouble with your snake where you just got a new snake that came from a somewhat smaller enclosure and you put it into a very large enclosure, but now it's not eating, it could very well be that it's too stressed because of the extra large enclosure. They're not used to that big of an area, they're a little uncomfortable. That can prevent them from wanting to eat, so I would suggest a smaller enclosure if you cannot get a snake to eat just in a deli cup overnight. Let's see. I have a blizzard male and I need to find a pair. If I get a blizzard female to pair with him, what morphs will I get later? So if you breed a blizzard to a blizzard, you'll get all blizzards. I get a lot of these questions of like, if I breed this to this, what will I get? And that's going to be a lot of these. Is the super thanks. So this is, if you would like to leave a super thanks, you're welcome to. That is sort of just a tip kind of for me, where you don't have to necessarily join or sign up for something. You can just say, hey, this video really helped me out, so here's an extra $5, $10, whatever, just to say thanks for your videos. That's what that's for. That's what the super thanks button is. But yeah, so the super thanks is not the same as joining the channel. Is it possible to create a lavender shatter? Which technically, yes, it is. A shatter is a combination of Sunkissed and Cinder, and then of course just adding lavender onto that is going to probably have a very similar color to a moonstone, or maybe a very muted orchid, and then have that crazy pattern going on after that. Okay, why did you choose to buy what you bought at Tinley? That was one of the questions in here. So at Tinley, I got 17 normal baby corn snakes that were all possibly hep for scaleless, and mostly the reason for that was to keep the shelves stocked. As much as I don't love just having a bunch of normals, it is kind of nice for people who just want pets or whatever, or just like, you know, who don't really care too much about the morphs that they get, to be able to buy a snake. And so that's part of the reason for that, was just shelf stocking essentially. I am going to keep at least a pair, maybe a trio of those, because I really like their pattern. They had a really funky looking pattern, and I just think that they're really cool. I also bought an adult mystery hypo female that was supposed to be a strawberry, but apparently was bred to a strawberry, and it turns out she's not a strawberry. So she's kind of a mystery, and she was a proven breeder. She wasn't too old, and she was absolutely gorgeous. So I decided to drop the money on her. And I also got an Ultramel Okati corn snake from the same person who sold the normal group to me. And I got her mostly because I just thought she was really, really pretty. That was pretty much it. I saw her and thought, wow, she's gorgeous. And so I got her, and those were the things that I bought at Tinley. Do you have to brewmate if you are not going to breed? No. In fact, even if you do breed snakes, you don't have to brewmate. Not all snakes are going to brewmate. A lot of corn snakes in the wild live in like Florida, where it never really gets that cold. So you don't have to ever brewmate, even if you do breed. If you would like to brewmate, you can do so, whether you are a breeder or not. You just want to make sure that you keep the snake at between 45 and 65 degrees. I would actually recommend to keep it in the 50s. 45, this is all Fahrenheit, by the way. So 45 is a little too cold. In my opinion, 65 is a little too warm. So it's best to kind of stick with the 55, and then if it fluctuates a few degrees within the 50s, then you're fine. And that is honestly just a refrigerator temperature. I don't recommend putting your snake in your refrigerator. However, a lot of people will get like wine coolers and stuff like that has ventilation, and just set it to about 55 degrees and use that as a brumation area. And that is something that I'm actually considering doing at some point. How do you keep a snake warm if you leave them in a deli cup overnight? I would recommend just keeping them kind of in their enclosure. Maybe just keep them on the cool side of their enclosure so they don't get too hot. But if their enclosure is comfortable for them, you can just put the deli cup in the enclosure. Or you could even just set the deli cup like near the enclosure, like kind of near the warmer area of the enclosure. Corn snakes especially, though, are usually going to be okay even if they get down to like 72 degrees. They're going to be fine. They're not going to go into brumation. It's just that's just a cool evening for them. And corn snakes especially are going to be fine. What would the baby's breed be if I bred a hypo A to a lava or a mask? So if you breed a hypo A to a lava, you'll get normals, het for lava, and hypo. If you breed a hypo to a mask, you will get, it depends on if the mask is homozygous mask or heterozygous mask. But assuming it's a heterozygous mask, you'll get half normals and half heterozygous masks that are all het for hypo. I hope that helps. I'm going to put a link in the description of where you can go to calculate your morphs, by the way. There's multiple different places online where you can put in the parent information, and it will spit out the percentages of what the babies will be. And keep in mind, most of the time you're going to get some normals, probably. All right. Have I done a video on lavender or ghost corns? Yes, I have done a video on both, and I will link both of them up in the cards above. What would the results be if you bred an ultra to an ultra or an ultra to a normal? There's a lot of these. Ultra to ultra gets all ultras unless they share other hets that are possible. Ultra to normal would be all normals het for ultra, again, unless there were other hets in there. If you get babies that look ultra, that means your normal is probably het amel. If I breed a blood red to a butter, what would I get? You would get normals het for diffused and butter, maybe some masks in there that are also het for those things, maybe some red factors in there, maybe some red factor masks. It all depends on what exactly is making up your blood red corn snake. A genuine blood red corn snake, I think the consensus, at least with my people here, was that a real genuine blood red corn snake has diffused, mask, and red factor or some type of red enhancing mutation. So assuming that your blood red is a really nice blood red and has all three of those, you will get a mix of red factors, masks, and red factor masks, all het for diffused, amel, and caramel. Is there a social media platform or some other way that someone could send you pictures if they're of their snake to get the morph identified? Or just a place in general that you would recommend? So I am the main admin of the Corn Snake Morph ID help group on Facebook, and so you are welcome to join that group if you are on Facebook. If not, you can email me, sarahsnakeshop@gmail.com. If you have a lot of different snakes that need to be identified and you would like me personally to identify them for you, I would say if it's more than just like 2 or 3, I do consultation services. It's $10. It's on my website, and you can even get 10% off of that through this holiday season. And that would be a way for us to just sit and talk. Either we could talk video chat or email. You can send me as many pictures as you want for the most part. And for $10, I can pretty much answer all of your morph questions. This is my first year breeding. What is it actually like to be a corn snake breeder? Kinks, problem feeders, egg binding, etc. Really, every year is going to be different. Being a breeder and being a seller are two very different things. And they come with their own different sets of problems. But if we're just talking about the breeding aspect, as far as the percentage of kinks, assuming that everything else is copacetic, right? So let's say you have snakes with really strong genetics and you're not worried about the offspring kinking by themselves, and you have really consistent temperatures and with incubation and like everything being copacetic, the chance of you getting kinks are very, very low. However, I have noticed that there's more kinks near the end of the season, especially in double clutches. I haven't had so many kinks from first clutches from females, but if there's retained sperm, I think sometimes that sperm can be a little like old or fragile, and it can cause just some other genetic anomalies. Not necessarily ones that are going to pass on, but most of the kinkers that I've had have been in the second clutch. If that's a problem, which thankfully for a long time I haven't had that much of a problem. You also want to be careful what bedding you're incubating your eggs on. So like assuming that there's no chemicals or problems like that, the kinks really are not as common as you might think. Problem feeders, same answer. I noticed that my babies that hatch earlier in the year tend to do vastly, much better than babies that hatch near the end of the year. I think part of that could be because of temperature. Once you get to fall or winter, a lot of times, the snakes know what time of year it is. So babies that hatch late sometimes will be a little bit more picky with food, at least from my experience. But normally it's not that big of a deal. However, when you're hatching 100 baby corns, let's say, you might have a handful, maybe 5 or so, that are just not really going to eat that well for you. So figure maybe about 5, maximum 10% of babies that might have some issues eating. When I say issues, maybe they just they don't want pinkies specifically. Maybe they want a different kind of food. Maybe they just need some help getting started. There's a lot of different things that can happen, and I can go into that in a different video. But for the most part, figure between 5 and 10% might have issues with feeding. Egg binding, also relatively uncommon. That's not something that you're going to really have a problem with that often. I have heard that striped corn snakes have a higher chance of becoming egg bound. I had that experience personally, which is why I really don't breed a lot of stripes, especially females. And I've also heard that from Steve Orlance. He and I were talking about that at one point. He said that a high percentage of his egg-bound females that he's had were all striped. So that's just sort of something to keep in mind if you want to do a stripe project. It might be better if the male is a stripe and the female is a motley het stripe. I don't know why that is, but it seems to be better. There are other things, but I'm not going to go into that right now, or this video would be super long. It's already long enough, and this is the end. So thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you everyone who submitted a question. This was awesome. And if you guys have any other questions, again, you're welcome to ask in the comments, and it will probably end up in a video like this. So thank you so much, and I will see you in a new video soon.